Getting started at AMS training program. Perhaps you feel you're entering a new and exciting time in your life. Well, you are.
We were just a bunch of guys that were working together in this little office in the Pentagon, and we didn't relish the idea of going to work for some big company when we left the government. So we said, hey, let's start a company. Only two little problems. One is our sum total of business experience among 5 people was me working 1 year for a consulting firm. Not too much business experience. Second of all, we had really no idea what kind of a business to start. Okay, why would that slow us down?
The whole idea behind AMS was to get some bright people together who like to work with each other, to do something useful, to do something productive, and to make some money along the way. And we would figure it out.
When we decided to start a business, we knew we'd need some capital to get launched. Steve Fenster, who was at Lehman Brothers in New York, he took it to a group in Lehman Brothers called Lehman Ventures, and they decided to finance us. They gave us $300,000 to get us launched.
Hugh Everett was absolutely key. I think we understood that from the beginning. That's why we gave him and his company Lambda 10% of the company ahead of time, because we really didn't have much software capability.
We didn't really know where we were going to go. We were making it up as we went for the most time. But what we did do is we did get one thing right. My mother was actually a good businesswoman, and she thought about it for a minute, and she said, well, do you have a plan B in case this computer stuff doesn't really amount to anything? And it turns out computer stuff did really amount to something, so, you know, we got that one right.
The whole idea was it was a meritocracy. Everybody's ideas were important. Everybody should contribute. Everybody's ideas should be respected. And out of that would come the best thinking collectively that would then help us serve the clients the best way.
This first day is a day that I'll never forget. I mean, how could you forget it when your child is born on the first day of the new job?
The ideas were unbelievably optimistic. I mean, from a planning point of view, we did try to figure out everything that might go wrong and do we have provisions for these. But emotionally, we never really doubted that, gee, this would work, and if it didn't work, we'll figure out something else that will work. We were gleeful.
People who are extremely bright, very sharp, very quick, very witty, and sometimes it was hand-to-hand combat, and it was survival of the fittest at times. But again, I think it created an esprit de corps.
AMS was a great place to work, such a great place to work. People were smart, they were ethical, they worked hard. If you cared, you came in on Saturday. Also, we had free lunch too, that was one of the reasons.
So AMS had a culture of work hard, play hard, and work hard again. And what that did is create incredibly strong bonds among the AMSers.
The project, that job, it was our life. We were there at all hours of the day and night, and everybody worked together. Most of us, I think, really loved it.
Most of us worked on Saturday mornings, and so we would bring our kids into the office to work. And that was not without mishaps. One Saturday morning, Bill Purdy's son, Stephen, stuck a screwdriver into the electrical outlet and caused a shock wave in the office.
I started in 1972 with a company with about 20 employees. And when I left as Chief Technology Officer, we had 10,000 people. This was not the same company, but it was still AMS.
I went to Bob Brayton, and I said, hey, Bob, I need my own PC. And Bob laughed, and 30 seconds later, he was still laughing. And he said, do you think that every manager in America is going to buy every employee their own PC? You've got to be kidding. It would never be cost justified.
We worked for 26 hours straight. And I remember putting 26 hours on my time card, taking it down to payroll, handing it to the person. She goes, there are only 24 hours, you can't put 26. And I was insistent, because I was so tired, that I had worked a 26-hour day.
And Ivan invited me out to lunch, and we went to a Chinese restaurant. So Ivan ordered in Chinese. I had no idea what we were getting. He ordered something that was spicy, fiery hot, and I, of course, instantly put a chili pepper in my mouth and couldn't breathe. And that's when Ivan said, are you coming or not? And I was like, water. Can I get some water? And the waiter came out and said, go away. I'm talking to this man. I want to know, are you coming or not? And I couldn't breathe. And finally, I said, yes, I'm coming. That was my official acceptance. It was probably at that point as much to get some water as it was to actually join AMS.
I knew that I had come to a place which was very, very different. very, very innovative, very curious, very open-minded, and that's the impression I got, and it's the impression I had is this is a place that I must work in.
I guess I sort of call it a kind of an era of anti-bureaucracy, in that we seem to go out of our way to minimize the rules and regulations. We don't run the company by the book, or certainly we don't run it by the printed book.
I was offered a job and rejected it. I remember Judy Tonelli called to raise the offer. I rejected it again. Ivan called and said, look, you've told us what you want to do. We've told you can do it here. Either you're lying to me or you're stupid. I quickly responded that my wife and I had decided we wanted to move to the West Coast for our first job out of school. He said, fine, we just opened a San Francisco office. You're hired.
At AMS, we were never afraid to make big bets. One of the bets we made was related to tax systems. The bet was that we would only get paid if we were able to raise revenues to pay ourselves.
My very first interview, actually at Purdue University, Milt Hess explained to me what AMS did to help save New York City from bankruptcy, and I was hooked.
The New York City project was definitely a defining moment, both for AMS and for me personally. But I got a phone call from Steve Clifford. The city had not yet announced publicly that it was going broke. I'm going to say that 2 weeks later. He had managed to get 5 years and $20 million to redo everything, and then he had read the paper I had written in 1973 saying that things were going to crash and here's what we should do to fix it. And he said, you were right, and can you do that now? Well, look, I can't do it for $20 million in 5 years. If we could do it in 18 months for $5 million, I could do it. But, okay, what's the trick there? And I said, well, the trick is no committees. You and I make all the decisions. And he said, I got that authority, we can do that. And so we were off and running.
I got a call to go over to the CNO's office in the Pentagon, and they told us about this new project where they were concerned about the amount of weight on U.S. Navy ships. And a big culprit to the tune of multiple tons was actually paper. And I'm like, well, what is it that you want us to do with this paper, right? And he says, well, I want you to figure out some new technology so we don't have to have all these manuals. And he said, there's this new thing called an optical disc, and it's supposed to be a high-density storage device. I mean, he said up to like 1.3 gigabytes, and it's got to be able to help us. And that's how Papership started.
Well, the slogan for the contract was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that idea came from a study that had been done that proved that a significant portion of the equipment failures in Navy ships were actually caused by people going in and doing preventative maintenance.
As we grew in Roslyn, we thought it would be best to try to get ourselves all together into one building, and that turned out to be the Kent Street office building. And I remember Ivan telling me when we started to plan for this, he said, Frank, he said, you know, this can either be the Nikolai building or the Nikolai Memorial building.
I feel privileged to pass on the consulting, leadership, client focus that's in my AMS DNA that now lives on in the CGI DNA.
I joined AMS in 1981 thinking I would stay for a short time. I stayed for 31 years. It was the only job I had. I met my husband at AMS. I always say it was one job, one husband, and the best time of my life.